All right. Well, welcome back. We're going to again take advantage of some folks who actually are doing it, are actually getting a check. Is my understanding you're getting paid for doing regenerative ag. And there's a lot of questions about that. We had a great breakout yesterday with regard to regenerative ag, some of the things that are going on, some really interesting comments, from the fellow that had the ethanol business and sharing some of those ideas. But we want to give you an opportunity to think about what are some additional ways that you can take advantage of programs and frankly increase revenues on your farm. And that's what this session is about. So please, 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 we want your questions. The guys are going to each introduce themselves individually, tell a little bit about their operations, and then mostly it's going to be about your questions. So we want to make sure we do that. Meristem's position, I'm going to speak for Meristem, is that they're going to support you, right? They are not going to be directly involved in working with the credits and that kind of thing, but they are indeed going to support what it is you need and what it is you want to do as it relates to regenerative ag. So that's our whole purpose. Please, 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 maybe jot down a question or two, and we'll go from there. So you can see our panel. We've got a quick bio on each of them, and when I pull up your bio, guys, I'm going to ask you to share maybe just a little bit more detail. So here we go. Kelly, you want to start us out?
Hello, I'm Kelly Garrett. I'm a farmer in western Iowa. I'm about an hour northeast of Omaha. We farm about 7,000 acres, 100% no-till. We also have a cow-calf herd. It's a family operation. I'm the 6th generation. I have the notoriety of being the first farmer in the United States to be paid for my carbon credits. That was on December 1st of 2020. I'm also a founding member of Extreme Ag. You know, Meristem is a supporter of ours. And now I work with Pete, also in Regenerative Root Solutions. It's an organization that lines farmers up with CPGs, consumer packaged goods companies, that pay farmers for sustainable practices.
Very good. Thank you. Great job. Andy.
Yeah, Andy Jenks, farm with my brother in Monmouth, Illinois, which would be western side of Illinois. 6th generation farmer, kind of like Kelly, I think what he just said. And also co-founder of a data company called Verdova, where we let growers tell their story about what's going on their farm, and then give the ability to growers to monetize on that data.
Very good. Thank you. Josh.
Josh McLean. We're from Northwest Kansas. We farm about 12,000 acres, what equivalates to like maybe 1,500 in the I-states, because we're not a lot of moisture out there. But 4 years ago we started retail ag, and then 3 years ago we started working in the carbon industry. We found unique ways for guys to get paid carbon in a bunch of different ways. We did our own farm as a guinea pig first, and then we worked it from there.
Very good, very good. And Pete, wrap us up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who Pete Miller is, but my name is Pete Meyer. I don't know how that got lost in translation there, but it's pretty good. So I started in the business as a floor trader at the Chicago Board of Trade, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And from there, I worked upstairs at some of the major Wall Street banks on over-the-counter trading desks. About 13 or 14 years ago, I started working at a place called S&P Global Platts. I was the head of their grain, oilseed, and advanced feedstocks analytics group.
Yeah, I understand.
So I had Dan Bassey's job before this, and I'm happy I don't have it now because the news is not great, right? But whatever. Then last March, meeting Kelly, so now we have a few businesses. One of the businesses that we want to talk about today is Regenerative Root Solutions. Regenerative Root Solutions was started to match up CPGs with farmers that are using sustainable practices, right? CPGs are paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 to $50 an acre for your sustainability. Okay, they it's almost like a tax. They kind of treat it as a tax. The idea was that we thought that with the farmers who are using sustainable practices, they'd be the best position to take advantage of the 45Z tax credit. Right? You all know about the 45Z tax credit, sustainable aviation fuel, ethanol is sustainable aviation fuel, right? Unfortunately, we don't have the rules yet on that or whatever. So as that started to slow down, now as part of Regenerative Roots with Kelly, I've gone back and talked to my Wall Street contacts, and we're talking to private equity funds like Blackstone, Warburg Pincus, those sorts of guys who are, have very, very deep pockets, who have clients that want to be able to meet their ESG requirements. Everybody knows what ESG is: environmental, social, governance, right? Everybody from an airline to your local food producer or your sneaker producer has ESG requirements. And the only way they can get there, in our opinion, is not via carbon offsets, but via what we call carbon insets, which is what you guys do when you, use sustainable practices on your farm. And I'll tell Pete Miller you guys said hi.
Well done. That's well played.
It does say Mr. Meyer, though. It's something.
Yeah, well, there you go. Hey, question, though. You talk about insets and offsets. I know it's been talked about, but just give us a little primer on that, would you please?
Scott Kirby, best thing I tell you, Scott Kirby's the CEO of United Airlines. And if you guys, I don't know how you guys flew here, maybe you flew Delta, I hope not, with what happened with CrowdStrike and the rest of that stuff, but so Scott Kirby is a good guy. He kind of gets it. And what Scott Kirby says is that offsets are really just a feel-good measure, right? When you buy a ticket at United, I don't know how it is on Delta because I typically fly United or American. In the lower corner there, you can pay a few dollars, $17, $20, whatever the number is, to offset the carbon footprint of your flight. It's rewarding bad behavior. Carbon offsets reward bad behavior. ESG statements may reward bad behavior as well, but we can talk about that in a little bit. So carbon offsets, you're really just paying some money. As Scott Kirby has famously said, there's only so many damn trees we can plant. It's true. Carbon insets are what you're doing with sustainable practices. Carbon offsets, yeah, with all due respect to Kelly, who got paid for his carbon credits, you're really you're paying for bad behavior.
Well, to that end, Kelly, who paid you for your carbon credits?
The first time on December 1st, 2020, that was in the Nori marketplace, and Shopify bought 5,000 of my credits at $15 a piece, so we got a $75,000 check. They were claiming to offset their Black Friday emissions, from just a few days prior. That's why it was December 1st. The other credits, Nori shopped around, and there were various buyers. That was the first time I was in it. That was a total of $340,000. That took them about 8 months to sell. And then in the spring of 21, I also started to work with Truterra, and I made a $200,000 sale then in the summer of 21. And now with Truterra, we'll make another sale of offsets, in a couple months. That'll be completed.
And I'm sure people are asking, so what did you do to prove and to be able to have value of somebody writing you a check for a couple $100,000? Give us what you did.
Well, it's important to understand that I don't change things to chase the sustainability dollars. Where I live in Western Iowa in the Les Hills, we have some 22 and 25% slopes that we farm. Not all of it, but it's not uncommon to be on a 14 or 15% slope. So the no-till is important. The cover crops are important just from the conservation and the erosion factor of it all. We've been some various forms of no-till my entire life, but in 2012 we were 100% no-till, even the corn on corn, things like that. Then in 15 and 16 we started with cover crops. We now try to be 100% cover crops, and we make that claim. But in the northern latitude that we are, we're farther north today, but in the northern latitude we are, it's hard to get those germinated all the time. Especially when it's dry, like it's been the last couple of years, 22 and 23. But we're 100% cover crops, and the no-till and the cover crops are what has qualified us for all of those sustainability dollars.
And before we open up to questions, just one more thing. I'm sure there's been a lot of documentation required for the quote-unquote proof, right? Talk about how you do that. Have you had to add staff to do that? What's been involved, if you wouldn't mind?
My bookkeeper or assistant on the farm helped with that original Nori documentation. The USDA 578s, the federal crop documentation, John Deere Ops Center or our Field View account, because they want to have a geospatial, basically you want to have a Google pin of all the fields to document the land. They were kind of making it up as we went along on that first contract. It took us 55 or 60 hours to accumulate that data. But you know, the data really had value, obviously, of $340,000.
Okay, very good, very good. Josh, I know you brought some additional visual support, so I'm going to ask him to run it from the back, and then I think you want to narrate maybe a bit.
So obviously we work offset inset as our tool too, and what we can do is, as a group here, I'm going to show you a map of how many unclaimed dollars there is in the America, or in these 9 states right now, because there's a lot of practices that farmers done in 23 that are available for carbon that expire in 30 days. I don't know if they can pull up the map yet. But so we're Louis here. This is a computer model that I can give you guys. I can show you guys on the map, but I can't give you access to it. So if you want to pull up your county or something, you guys can get a hold of us. But so this is it's a computer model that's proprietary to us through Indigo. This is the entire map of the United States. If they start playing the video, we'll show what we're going to show.
Want to start the video, please?
So I'll go back one here. Well, anyway, between North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, there's 2.9 million acres that a cover crop's been planted in 23 that still hasn't been, basically somebody did a practice in 23, hadn't been claimed yet. If you take that into right now, the carbon market's sitting at about $55 to $75 a ton, give or take on that, depending on where you're at. It equivalates to about $120 million. That's just sitting there for the farmers to get. That's going to expire in 30 days, more or less, because once those 23 practices go off with us, they're no longer a new practice. So if you are out there as dealers and you're wanting to go talk to those farmers, we can literally give you a map of your counties per se. If you go to the next slide, so like here's a county in Illinois, for a second, right up there, there's the name of it. These fields here are cover crops in 23 that the farmers have been unclaimed for. So there is a lot of money just sitting there that guys can actually qualify for. That's already something they've already done last year. And it's free money, and it's guaranteed a minimum of $20. But when you go further east, the cover crop's going to sequester 3/4 to a ton an acre. You're looking closer at the $40 to $50 an acre.
And this is something you're saying they've already done.
They've already done. This is a 23 crop year. When we go through next year, then we'll have a 23 crop year. That's something that they can do again. This is something that they did in 23 that's eligible for payment yet. That's going to expire September 1 on our platform. That's just money wasted.
Very good.
$120 million basically in the major corn growing.
$120 million.
Yep.
Wow. Wow. All right. Well, let's do this. And Andy, maybe from your perspective, what do you see in the whole regenerative ag area? And then we're going to open it up to your questions, which I know you have some.
Yeah, I guess you can look at it 2 different ways. The sustainability, regenerative ag. You talk. Sustainability. When I think sustainability, I think of things that keep the farm really in the same shape as when you found it. Right. Regenerative, I think of improving on what maybe what my grandfather had or the previous tenant had. What we've got to do going forward, though, is we've got to tell our story through data. I think, the 45Z is just I think will just boost what's coming next in the CPG space. The 45Z with the government dollars is going to really put the onus on your CGBs, your Cargills, that are playing in that export market to not be lost on the low carbon intensity fuel, or carbon intensity bushel. So that data enriched bushel. So I guess what I would tell guys is make sure you have your data in a spot to be ready, because like Kelly's found, like the guys that get in first are going to be reaping rewards. It's going to become common practice in 5 or 6 years, and I anticipate if you don't have your data in line in 2030, you're going to be taking a discount for your grain versus a premium. So get it in place early on and reap the rewards, especially in this low market. I mean, 10, 20, 30 cents right now. I'm taking advantage of, I think Bosch said something about the ADM, 20 cents. Take advantage of that. There's lots of those different programs out there. And 20 cents in today's market means we're actually making money, maybe.
Yep. Yep.
You made an interesting observation. You thought if it wasn't, if you weren't doing this by 2030, you're going to get a discount. You're going to
I think, I think having your ducks in a row right now, having your data. I mean, we all know the culture we live in, and the desire to know what's going on how our food's made. And once you make information available, that information becomes that's the standard then, and they want more. Always wanting more.
Okay.
And so get your stuff in line right now, and be able to capture the premium on those data-enriched bushels.
Josh, you had a comment.
Yeah, so 45Z is going to be great in your area if it fits for you. But like they said yesterday in the meeting, 10% of the ethanol plants are going to participate in 45Z. 5 billion bushels roughly last year went to ethanol. If you take 10%, that's 500 million bushels. We raised 15.3 billion bushels in 2023. That's 3.2% of America's crop is going to more than likely participate in 45Z. So don't just settle and sit back for 45Z. If it's in your area and you got a market, darn sure use it. But if you don't, you need to have another platform of regenerative ag, whether it's through a carbon insetting, offsetting, or a company that can do both or all three. But don't just sit on the sideline, because in a lot of companies like what we use, for example, you can take your practice changes you already done in 23, and that'll also, you can use that forward. You can flex into 45Z if that's in your market. You can do it into an insetting, offsetting market. You can combine those all together, but you need to participate in some way or the form or not, because if you already done that practice change and then it comes to common practice, then you're not going to have that change to be able to qualify you for a decade.
Okay.
Could I comment?
Yeah, please.
Andy's 100% right. In 2030, if you don't have your data and your documentation, you could be taking a discount. Josh is correct. 45Z isn't going to encompass everybody. It's really the government's first time in actually getting into the sustainable space. Just like Dan talked about, it's consumer driven. And things are on hold just a little bit as we wait for Vilsack and USDA to come out with 45Z. We don't know who the president's going to be, but it's consumer and company driven, CPG driven. This is the first time the government has stepped in, but in the conversations we've had with companies like Smithfield and Tyson, major protein producers of our food in the United States, they're concerned about what's the CI of the corn that they're going to purchase, because the consumer wants to buy low CI chicken, low CI beef, things like that. Back to Andy's comment, in 5 years, I think everything we purchase could have a CI score on it based on the companies that we're talking to, especially what you're wearing and what you're eating. And the consumer wants it to be low CI. And as Meristem dealers, and this is, Peter and I have had many conversations about this, you're lowering your customer CI score. This is where like Extreme Ag comes into the agronomic side of this. You're lowering your customer CI score with everything you sell. Whether they know it or whether you know it, you need to educate yourself on that as dealers. If you're not increasing commercial NPK, anhydrous, UAN, MAP, DAP, potash, if you're not increasing that, but you're helping them with their yield, you're lowering their CI score. And that needs to be your message, especially with $4 corn.
So you're saying it's not a fad and it's just something the government's come up with?
Not in my opinion.
No.
Okay, all right. Go, Pete.
Clean data, I'll echo exactly. Clean data is the most important thing that we look at, right? When you look at 45Z, whenever we get that from the government, who knows when we're going to get it from the government? And when we talk to the USDA says they don't really think we're going to get guidance until at least the first quarter of 25, maybe the second quarter. My fear, having been in the energy business as well, is this is going to be exactly the same what happened with the renewable fuel standard and ethanol. Yeah, don't worry about it. We'll let you know next year what you should have done last year, right? But the clean data is extremely important, because you can go to a third-party provider, you can do it yourself, figure out your carbon intensity score, but 45Z is a tax credit. So whatever ethanol plant you sell your low CI score corn to, that ultimately is going to end up in sustainable aviation fuel, they're going to have to withstand an IRS audit. They're going to have to withstand a Department of Energy audit. They're going to have to defend themselves against a U.S. Treasury audit. This stuff's not easy, right? So to Andy's point, I mean, clean data is, I asked it at Kelly's Field Day, you guys have been collecting data for 5-10 years, and you thought, well, what's this worth? It's going to be worth something here now, but it has to be clean. And it has to be clean data. A lot of the data we just get permission from a farmer to go into JD Ops Center or something. We pull it out. It doesn't take us more than 15 minutes, and we've paid out checks in 6 figures for 15 minutes worth of work. But the data's got to be clean. You got to pay attention to it. This is your time to get paid for your data.
Yep.
Thank you for that. All right, I know you got questions. Let's have them. Got one right here. Just be loud. I don't know where the mics are.
Okay, so I agree with pretty much a lot of it, but I'm still speculative on how it's good for young producers, because this actually benefits a lot of older producers that have the ground built to where they want it. Then they come in and introduce cover crops and no-till, and they're living off no high-end land maintenance. But then again, you need to be flexible. Like you say, you've had no-till for how many plus years? Are you coming in every once in a while and putting some of that organic matter down into your B horizon or C horizon? Because over 100 years, I don't get down to convention, but that's where I think those programs need to actually.
Here's a mic. Here's a mic. It's on.
Where those programs need to advance into the flexibility of, I don't believe in tilling every piece every year, because that is terrible for your soil. But then again, you also want to invert the soil every 3 to 4, 5 years, depending on how much organic matter you're putting on top, which is due to your yields, due to your rotation.
So your question is, though, still about how does the young guy take advantage versus the person that's already built up the
and
ground?
Where do you think? Because,
Yeah.
like you said before, this is the first time the government came in. Well, haven't they had like the CRP programs and that before?
Let's
That
open
really
that up.
wasn't-
Let's open up that to everybody. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being old. I'm just telling you. Okay. All right.
A CRP program was set aside acres for supply and demand, in my opinion, not sustainability. These are sustainability programs. Agronomically, agree to disagree. No-till for me and my soils is better than tillage. And if you want to do something, excavator. There's your product there. We use it on our farm. It's a great. I've tried about every residue breakdown product there is, and there isn't one better. That's what we use on every acre to get it down there. I don't want to till. I think it destroys the structure of my soil. I think it burns up the nutrition that residue provides, things like that. And it's from a young producer. Again, as a meristem dealer, your agronomic message should be efficiency. Anytime you are increasing efficiency, you're increasing profitability, and the products you sell are sustainable. Fuel line, maintain, excavator, rev line, all of those. And by and large, a younger producer is going to be more able to adopt those, more progressive, if you will, than an older producer. We all have dads, and they all say no when you bring them a product like Revline late season. Typically, a younger producer will capture these and try to be more efficient sooner, and that is that. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't know that your perspective. I quite agree with it on all those things.
How would others
I would
like to
add
respond
on
to that? Go.
Yep. Okay. So how we do it is, right, so there is no contracts. Like, it's day by, you have a signed contract, but you can cancel in time, no payback, no money. So you could sign up today, cancel tomorrow. And just because we can dig into your data and find you some money. So if we did get you for a transition to no-till, right, and you have a huge rain come through and it just washes your fields out and you got to work it out, it doesn't kick you out of our program, but you don't generate carbon that year. So you can change and do farm however you want. We're never going to tell you how to farm, right? Because we're American farmers. Everybody does things different. I mean, what I do in Kansas is darn sure what you don't do in your own home. Like, that's the great thing about ag. There's a million different ways to skin a cat.
Yes.
We're all farmers. We can all do it in different ways. We just look at how we're going to find you money. So you do what you want. We can dig through the data, find what's going to pay you, and then work backwards that way. We never tell people how to farm.
Other comments, Andy or Pete?
Changing practices for a young farmer will be worth money. I can't tell you what it's worth today, but everybody we talk to, changing practice is going to be worth money. And by I mean toward, I understand what you were saying to Kelly, but we do fight with this land usage clause that a lot of guys talk about. They say, well, should I till my field this year and then not till it next year? Then I'll get this money and that money. So I mean, it's a very fluid landscape at the moment. But I can tell you, when we talk to guys that are willing to pay the money, they certainly talk about any change in practices towards the sustainability side, right? I mean, we talked about 45Z, 40B. We just got guidance on that. I talked about that. That was retroactive as well. They bundled all three of these practices together: tilling, cover crops, less synthetic fertilizer, right? The Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, didn't know that there was only 18 million acres of cover crops in this country, and All of a sudden now he's like, well, maybe we need to unbundle those free practices. So if we had to bundle those free practices, you'd have very few, you'd have 18 million acres, and it's probably not all corn that'd be eligible for 45Z if they kept it bundled. They kind of let the cat out of the bag when Vilsack said about 6 weeks ago, well, we're going to go to a comment period. In my opinion, they were going to bundle all three practices. Everybody we talked to on the ethanol side said, no. We talked to the Andersons, we talked to Poet, no, don't worry, they're going to unbundle. And I said, I don't know if I said it to Kelly or maybe one of our other partners, I said, is that wistful thinking or is that really what they're going to do? And now they let the cat out of the bag, but they know it's not. So my point is any change in practices, okay, is going to help you. Now, you say, what does it cost you to put cover crops on? $50 an acre, maybe?
I wouldn't say that much. I planted a lot of custom for
Right.
crops.
But it,
Three species blend is probably
let's say it's $30 an acre. Let's just say that at $4 corn, are you going to spend an extra $30 not knowing what the rules are? You're not. And damn it, that's the worst thing that we have facing us is we just don't have the rules on 45Z.
Okay, go.
Your the tillage versus non-tillage with relative to the older versus younger producer, I think there's a lot more to sustainability than no-till and cover crops. And your products are an example of that. But I don't know that the age factor is into it as strong as what you had brought up. But yes, there's a million ways to do it. In 2020, we had the derecho, and I had to do some tillage to clean up from that. So yes, it does happen. You're correct. By and large, in my soils, I need to be no-till because of the erosion. But you get to McLean County, Illinois, where it's blacker, darker, flat soil. If that producer chooses to do tillage, I don't. That's none of my business. But there's a lot more to sustainability than no-till and cover crops, and that's what we need to educate the outside world on.
Okay, great. All right, other questions?
Question we got back here, I'll say it right here, Perk. Question came up in the back. Are you got anybody on the panels hearing from landowners? We did hear from Hertz in another meeting that there are agreements, rental agreements that are starting to carve out how absentee landowners get paid from sustainable dollars, and even looking for farmers that are wanting to be more aggressive. So you guys hearing anything about land rents and how this affects this discussion?
Well, maybe even as on top of that, how is your ability and your willingness to be a part of regenerative practices, is that enhancing your ability to first and foremost rent ground? Right. And then let's tag on that question of, are you seeing folks saying, hey, we want a piece of your regenerative payback? Whoever wants to,
so
whoever wants to
obviously,
start.
as a farmer, if you're getting more revenue and there's a land rent auction coming up right in our area, and if I'm making $30, $40, $50 more an acre than my neighbor because I'm getting it from a carbon standpoint, I'm obviously going to be able to outbid him. So that is driving the land rent market in our area, is what's coming back in Endale. And then where we deal with, there's no time contracts. You can exit it when you want. We only deal directly with the farmer. So that's on you if you want to deal with your landowner or not. That's on the farmer himself. That's not for us to tell you how to deal with your landlords, because we don't want to get involved between you and your landlords. That's between you as a farmer yourself.
What about you, Andy? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess on my end, I've had that talk with a couple, and I've just been transparent with them. And again, kind of piggybacking on what Josh said, if you're bringing an extra $20, $30 an acre, they're going to understand what practices are going on, and they're going to end up getting more revenue. In my part of Illinois, back when government payments first started, I'm going to show my age here. I've been farming for 25 years, so there was a few guys that opted out of government payments. Well, then as those became, instead of $20, they became $60 an acre. Those guys couldn't pay the same rents, and it's no different here. The economy is going to dictate what the landowner ends up getting in the long run.
Guys, comments about? Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. So,
or Pete. Sorry.
You've heard, that's Pete Miller. So you've heard from a few people here that they think by 2030 everything you buy is going to have a CI score attached to it, right? From your clothes to your food. You heard from Dan Bassey that the only thing that's holding up the farm economy at the moment is land value. Well, if you have a CI score and everything's going to have a CI score, the only way your land value is going to maintain its current value is through sustainable practices if you believe that within the next 5 years, everything's going to have a CI score on it. Okay? Second thing I'll say, when we talk to Wall Street and these private equity funds, they're not interested in trading carbon credits, or trading carbon insets. They, again, what they want is an investment vehicle. So we've approached to them and said, okay, look at the high interest rates. Look at what farmers are paying on their operating notes. This is really starting to hurt them. Here's what we think you should do. We think that you should lend the money on operating notes, and if you want to put a sustainability clause into the loan agreement, save the farmer a couple points. This way, you have something you can sell to your ESG clients that may be willing to invest. Okay, they're now looking at 10% returns, 20% returns, 30% returns, but I mean, who in this room wouldn't want a lower operating note? Everybody wants them. Dan talked about that, how we're kind of stuck now between 4 and 7%, right? The days of free money, whether it was Trump bucks or PPP or whatever else is going on. And by the way, I don't think Trump bucks are coming back, so I don't think that's going to happen at all, no matter who gets elected, or if he gets elected, I should say. So the fact of the matter, we've gone to them with this product, and they're like, wow, that's interesting, because it checks 2 boxes. It gives them an investment vehicle. It may not pay them a huge return, but in return, then they also get a sustainability clause, and this way they can sell it to their investors, and they feel that they can, somehow get back to their ESG statement qualification on that.
For more than one lender, they believe there will be an ESG score that will indeed impact interest rate.
Right.
Oh, exactly.
No, I don't really know. Yeah. I mean,
how will they calculate all those questions?
Yeah, with all due respect to Farm Credit, I mean, they're not in that business, right?
Fair enough.
Right.
Yeah. All right. What else? Questions? Over here, we got one. Right there. There we go.
Straight in the back.
All right.
So we've been doing a lot of the sustainable practices for the last 30 years, and we've never been getting paid for them, but we still do them because our farm survivability depends on it. How do people get into the marketplace that have been doing this for the last 30 years and not been getting paid for these things?
Good. Go ahead, Josh. Okay, so it's simple, like with us, if you're already doing cover crops, right? So add a legume to it, that requalifies as a different practice. If you are doing legumes, if you would extend the life period of that cover crop for 2 weeks, if you either planted a little earlier or did the termination late, just a little bit later, that requalifies your acres. So there's a lot of ways when you're entering data to show that you can, even though you've already been doing these, like obviously for us, we've been no-till for 40 years in Kansas because we have to conserve moisture. There's still ways they have different tweaks and things that you can still get qualified for paying programs.
Truterra announced a program yesterday, I believe, that's a long-term adopter program. It'll pay up to $25. I think it pays up to $25 an acre for someone in your position that wouldn't qualify for the additionality. There would be an example.
Wow, great. Great question, too, by the way. Other questions?
Straight back.
Yeah, go back here. We got one.
Yeah, just I know that computer program thing wasn't working for you, Josh, but it intrigued me as a salesperson. That looks like a pretty good target way to target market and target a customer. And so I think about this whole thing, and it creates a phenomenal conversation at the farm gate. We always go out and talk about yield, increasing yield. This is a way to flip that script and talk about something that is coming, that is going to be part of every farm operations income going forward. So with that being said, I just kind of want to dive a little bit more into, they're all good points, all good opportunities, but Josh, how has that program, if you can go on there and you can find those fields and know who farms those fields, how has that impacted your Meristem business?
It's increased my sales dramatically because it's like digging for gold, but you have an X on the map and you know where to dig. So for me, I use it as a tool. The carbon is a tool to help my other businesses, to help the farmer, right? Because we're all in a struggle. I can go to that farmer and say, hey, look, your field is something you've done last year. You qualify for a payment, and you're basically giving them a coupon to spend money back with you on products to sell to them, because Meristem's products line up so well with sustainability ag that you can help them, give them money to help spend with you as a dealer.
I got one right here. Peter took part of it, so from the same standpoint of sales, Andy kind of touched on it, but if each one of you would touch on what sustainability means to you and regenerative health. Kind of touch on what that means to you and how you position that, and then also where Meristem, you kind of answer that, where Meristem products help you as a farmer standpoint, or where you see it's going to go to help with the sustainability and regenerative health, carbon credits, so forth.
Okay, let's just go right across. Andy, let's start with you.
Yeah, like you said, I touched on it a little bit before, but sustainability to me is doing the right things. We're putting the fertilizer where it needs to be, not putting too much on. Those are the things obviously are pretty easy to do. Regenerative, you're more the hey, let's better than what my grandfather had do. We've got better technology. We've got better abilities to really get dial things down in. And what was the second part of your question? I apologize. I think it was obviously Meristem sells some of the products that we can lower our nitrogen use, lower our phosphorus use, and any time we can use those types of products to again lower our carbon intensity, we're going to reap rewards. And I would tell you that's you're all salesmen in here. I'm not a salesman. I'm just a farmer, just like a few of the other guys up here. Anytime a salesman can bring us opportunities on our farm that are not just, hey, I'm here to sell a product. I'm actually here to help you make money. Those are the conversations that intrigue all our interests. So I guess this is giving you an opportunity to do that, whether it's the carbon intensity calculator or whatever. These types of conversations farmers actually look forward to, especially in this marketplace.
Very good. Josh, how would you answer this question?
He touched on a lot of good points. Like I said, sustainability is a way to raise the same amount of bushels or more bushels with less. Like that's what we're all after, right? And so Meristem's products go right in with that. And if you can find ways in markets to get extra money for things that are going to increase your bottom line at the farm, that's a double win. And the other thing that needs to be point on about is that at the same time, you can take government payments and stack those on top of private industry with carbon of anybody, on top of like a wildlife federation. Like you can do all those together to stack on some serious money onto that same acre.
Very good. Pete?
It doesn't matter what I think sustainability is. It matters what the definition of sustainability is for the person that's signing the check, that's putting money in your pocket. So it doesn't really matter now I'm not a farmer, okay? But it doesn't matter so it's kind of like the market, right? Dan was talking about the market going down. I mean, how many of you guys have friends that are yelling at the market all the time? Oh, it's wrong. You go on social media, USDA sucks, this is going on, they're all wrong. The market is always right. The customer is always right. You can't beat the market. So I listen to what the customer says. Now, we work with a nonprofit group called Leading Harvest. You can look them up online. They have a standard. They have 13 different things that you have to do to meet their standard, and then they audit it. So they're arguing the fact that, and Leading Harvest, a nonprofit, is funded by Deere, Nestle, and Nutrien. What they're arguing is that there should be a standard for sustainability, right? They're probably saying our standard should be the best. These 13 boxes you should check. Whatever. They're a nonprofit. Doesn't matter. But I get what they're saying, right? Everybody has their own definition of sustainability. So to me, as a guy who's trying to match up farmers with the money, I have to listen to what the client says or the payer says. What's your definition of sustainability? And then I see if I can make that match.
Very good.
The number one thing I've learned today is that the market's always right. So it must be like my wife.
Oh, good.
And I could maybe become a better marketer if I stopped arguing with Amber or the corn market.
Females are the best marketers because they don't have any
Yes.
emotion in the market. I've proven that with hundreds of farmers. There's no question females are the better because they have no emotional attachment to their crop.
I feel like a light bulb just went on for me. Don't
Go ahead,
argue
there
with
you go.
Amber.
There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Pete.
If I would just start arguing with Amber.
Let's stop
Classic.
arguing with Amber.
Yeah, very good.
Sustainability to me, and this is why I say I don't chase the sustainability dollars. Sustainability to me is becoming more efficient, becoming a better steward of the land. One contact of mine in Des Moines says it's no longer for us okay to be sustainable. We need to be regenerative. We need to be repairing the land, like Andy said, back to how it was when our grandfathers had things like that. And where Meristem comes into play is you can help the farmer become more sustainable. You can help the farmer lower their CI score. I have drawn up a couple inset programs on the whiteboard that we have proposed to CPGs about. In this example, there's a bit of math here involved because we're talking about 45Z. Every point, okay, so 45Z says the ethanol plant's going to get 2 cents per gallon tax credit for every point they reduce. That 2 cents translates to 5.5 cents per bushel. The accepted science is 2.75 gallons of ethanol per bushel of corn. So it's 5.5 cents per bushel is what we're talking about on every point. So on 200 bushel corn, we're talking about $11 an acre per point. And if you can help with your products, if you can help the farmer just cut their P and K in half. Say the farmer's putting on 150 pounds of MAP, 150 pounds of potash, and you can use your products to get that to 75 pounds of MAP and potash, and then increase the yield 10 bushel, which I believe in the trials I've done with Peter is very likely. You can drop that score 2 points. And that's a metric you could take to the farmer. So there you're improving $22 of value. Now that $22 of value is not to the farm, it is from the 45Z tax credit, and we don't know how much the ethanol plant will share with us yet. But that is a way to talk to the farmer about the metric. Again, you've got fuel line maintained. We haven't even talked about lowering the nitrogen. If you can lower commercial NP and K on the farm and show a yield gain, you're going to lower the CI score. A CI score is simply output divided by input. If you can use your products and you can show a 10 bushel yield gain, you have effectively lowered the CI score 0.5 point. A 10 bushel yield gain will lower the score 0.5 point. That's how Meristem can help the farmer with sustainability, lower the commercial fertility, NP and K, raise their yield. And there's metrics there that you can use to show the farmer, your customer, that.
It's a great way to think about CI score, output divided by input.
Yes, it is. That's all it is.
Great, simple way to think about it. Do remember, though, the calculator that's on the website. Pretty darn cool, right? And it's there for you to use. So make sure that you do that. What else? Other questions? We want to make sure we take advantage. Yeah, right here. Got a mic? Here comes the mic.
Is there no concern that if too many people buy into these programs over the next 10 years, that soon it'll become a mandate that if your CI score is not at a certain point, that maybe you can't find a buyer for your product?
No. And the reason I say that is because in 2020, we needed 100 million tons of carbon to offset. By 2030, we need 1 billion. By 2040, we're looking at 3 to 4 billion. And the reason that 2030, everybody keeps saying 2030 is important, right? So in America, the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, is one that's putting the teeth behind these companies that are publicly traded who came out and said that they're going to be carbon neutral. Well, what they've realized is that half of our population that leans one way, we're not going to get into politics at all, truly believe this is going to make a difference. And so they invest money in green companies, and so that's why the SEC is involved, to make a long story short.
The other thing I tell you about that is I've got a real good friend that's way smarter in carbon credits than me. But one of the profound things he said to me one time is he said, and you know, what do you think of indigo? He was, and I know they're not super highly thought of in certain spaces, but he was super intelligent in that space. He said it would take 5 Earths of farmland across the United States, or actually farmland across the world, to adopt no-till, to adopt cover crops, and to adopt regenerative ag, to meet the needs of all the promises that corporate America have made. So what that tells you is, you know, the 30, $50 an acre you're getting per ton should be more like, you know, 100 to 200.
Okay. That brings up an interesting question for all of you, either working with growers or being one yourself. What's the hardest thing you see that's been to change to get there? What biggest change have you had to make? What's been the most challenging change to make to your operation, or that you're seeing operations make? Right? Andy, why don't you start? We'll just go right across.
I'm probably, you know, from where my ground looks a lot like McLean County, Illinois. It's flat, black. We do some cover crops in areas that we've got some sand or we've got some rolling ground. The flat and black is tough for us to do cover crops. I lived through 2009, 2019, where, especially in 2019, where the ground that guys that had cover crops never got planted. It was prevent plant. And to me, in my part of Illinois, if there would have been a lot of cover crops in 2019, we wouldn't have been staring at $5 corn, $6 corn. We'd probably been staring at $10, $12 corn. Just ground would not have got planted. So, you know, there's a trade-off there, whether we want people to go hungry or we want to, feed the get lower carbon intensity. So there's a definite trade-off there, but I think the technology is going to adapt, and new, we're going to be able to spray cover crops with drones eventually, as we can get the gallons. So again, as we continue to adopt and move forward, I think we'll get there.
What's the toughest thing you see for people to change?
Well, just what he said on the drones with the cover crops, we actually, in our business, we do interseed cover crops with drones. Yeah. It's a doable thing. It's very simple, very great. I mean, that is something that you can do, and that and the biggest challenges that we face, obviously, in our area is our moisture situation. And so getting people to realize that a cover crop isn't going to, if you use the right species, is not going to take away from moisture in our area.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's a million different ways to do cover crops to get them out there, but that's not the only thing that you get paid on, because we're not telling you that you have to go to no-till. Even if you reduce tillage by one pass, you can pay, or you can get paid off of nitrogen management. There's a bunch of different ways. Crop diversity. Everybody gets hung up on cover crops, but it's just not cover crops that pays.
Yeah, very good. What's the biggest thing you've seen, the biggest challenge for guys to get more focused on regenerative?
I think finding the money at the moment, right? There's plenty of money to go around when corn's at $6 or $7. There's not a lot of money to go around it. It's just the attention to it.
Okay.
So it's a chicken and an egg situation. This is what we talk when we talk to the end buyers of these carbon insets or carbon offsets. It's like, you really need to change the practices, but changing the practices costs money. We just talked about what it costs to put on a cover crop and this and that. It's hard at $4, but at $7 everybody's buying power boats when you really should be looking at your practices, right? Only kidding. Oh, sorry, Kelly. Did you buy a power boat? No. Only kidding. Only kidding. My
No, he
friend
just
Kelly.
got a bigger one. Yeah, there you go. Kelly, go. Biggest thing, hardest thing to change.
Number one, an older farmer especially, they have a hard time wrapping their head around what is carbon, what am I selling? They want it to be a tangible thing. What am I
Can't reach
selling?
out and touch it.
Yes. And like when we started with cover crops for erosion and things like that, and then we started talking about putting in more and more of them because of the sustainability dollars and the agronomic benefits, my dad said, it's hard enough to raise one crop, and now you're going to try to raise two. And he's not the only person that has ever said that to me.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Other questions?
Straight back.
I got one back here.
Go.
Real quick, it came up earlier, the rent piece, and I think sometimes there's some question around, will this last 3 years, will this last 5 years, will this last 10 years? And just kind of throwing out there, it sounds to me like, we talk about 45Z and the government programs, and that's bringing some light to this. And Kelly mentions the efficiencies he's gained on his farm, and that's creating more profitability. So it's a long-term sustainable practice. But I look at landowners, and generations are going to think like this. So the younger generations that are going to inherit the farms or buy the farms, they're going to think more like this, right? So with or without the government, I guess, what's your thoughts or your opinions on the sustainability? If I'm a younger farmer or older farmer, I'm going to say, okay, I believe what you say. I'm going to incorporate these practices. I'm going to become more efficient. I'm going to try to drive my CI score down. But there might be a change in government, and 3 years from now, that they might throw all that out and go away. Is this more of a long-term, likely practice, a way to monetize second crop on the farm, with or without the government?
Who wants that one? Josh, go.
It's all private industry. I mean, private industry driven. It's the CPGs when we go to talk to them. I mean, they want this because they found out in the marketplace if they can write carbon neutral on their packaging. Take Fat Tire beer, for example. You grab a 6-pack of Fat Tire beer, it says carbon neutral on the label. I mean, people want to buy that so they can make themselves feel good about it. It's private industry driven here in America. So as long as people believe that the private industry is going to continue, it'll always continue.
They probably don't need to write that on the 6th can, but you're right. I mean, you're already feeling good.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. What else? How else you want to answer that? Great question.
I think it is a consumer-driven space, so I think it continues to go on. Hopefully the government doesn't screw it up. But again, at the end of the day, we're becoming more efficient, we're becoming more profitable because of these practices. And I think to get to the next yield barrier, on my farm at least, what I'm seeing, you've been there, Peter, what I'm seeing is that working more in tune with Mother Nature instead of against her, and I'm talking about all of the NP and K and all of the NP&K that gets put down, the commercial NP&K, trying to be more efficient with that, work more in tune with Mother Nature, is how we make more yield and make more profit. So I would continue to push for this on my farm, whether or not the government is involved or not, or the sustainable space is involved, because efficiency equals profitability.
Yeah, it's more than a feel good. It's all consumer driven, right? I mean, you know, when you listen to Trump with his, you know, here's a guy that's talking about putting 100% import and export tariff on China, but yet in his acceptance speech, he said, "Oh, we're done with all this green fuel stuff. We're going to put all that money to roads, whatever wasn't spent, this and that." Corn market was down a dime the next day, but then all of a sudden somebody else has something else to say. So I think that in the long term, you have to look at it as I agree with Kelly. It's all consumer driven, and the younger consumers. I have two young sons below the age of 30, and they actually look at this stuff. I don't look at this stuff. I'm 67 years old. I don't look at it, but it all has to be consumer driven. Now, we can get into the weeds here and say, well, with inflation the way it is, if it costs me more to buy this or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's all consumer driven.
And the consumer, I'll just say it, guys. There's too much money chasing it. Consumers actually do care. They actually care. So, not an option. It's going to happen. Let's go. What else? Other questions? Other questions?
There's one.
Go. Oh, we're getting the mic. Thank you.
In a recent article about the Farm Bill, they mentioned that if you don't follow ESG guidelines, you may not get crop insurance. So what's the difference between ESG and CI scores, or are they the same?
PFC. I don't know what PFC is.
Yep.
Who wants it?
No, I'm not sure on that one at all. I mean, we'd have to look that up to get back to you. The worst thing a person can do in the carbon industry is tell a lie, because it's our industry, you know, and it's our livelihood as American farmers. So, I mean, if you don't know, I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
Did you say ESG?
You know, what's the difference between ESG and CI, and in essence, are they the same? Was the question.
Oh, ESG. I thought he said PFC. Yes, ESG and CI.
Environmental, social, and governance.
Yes.
And versus CI. How much of it is impactful on one or the other? Are they the same?
ESG.
His comment was that we may not be able to get crop insurance, if I heard you correctly, correct?
That's right, yeah.
If we didn't have the right score.
Well, I've also heard you weren't going to get crop insurance if you didn't fill out your USDA survey, right? How's that working for you? 45% of surveys made it back to NASA after the last one. Somebody else was asking that question, this gentleman here. Everybody's complaining about the data, as Dan said, data in, data out. ESG is a policy adopted by mostly by private firms, right? CI score came into vogue on 45Z because it's a metric where you can judge what your carbon intensity is. So those two things really aren't related. ESG is just a policies put in by private company or public companies, just you know, companies that are out there. It's a totally different type of deal, in my opinion.
Other questions? Great question. Oh yeah, back here, go. Right into the mic.
Are there any rules around seeding rates on the cover crops, like how low or high can you run them? And then also with mixes, are there rules around what the mix is? And then second part of this question, do you guys have any advice for what mixes of cover crops to start out with to kind of curb some of the other complications with it, like more pests in the ground and nutrient tie-up in the early years of cover crops? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so seeding rates on cover crops, and then do you have recommendations on what to start with if you're doing a new one? Am I got that right?
Yep.
Okay, who wants it?
The only rules I've ever come across is when you're dealing with EQIP dollars, they want you to seed rye, and the recommendation I would make you is don't use rye. I don't like rye, and when everybody talks about cover crops, the default thing in their head is rye, and it's tough to terminate if you plant it too thick. It's such a scavenger, and if you don't get it terminated quick enough, it doesn't put the nutrients back into the soil. And the only time I'll put rye out now is if I'm going to chop it and put it in the pit for cattle. I've had some disasters with rye, and it drives people away from cover crops. I like oats, I like durum wheat, I like brassicas, I like things like that. Rye's a problem for me, and it causes a problem if you tell somebody to use it and it's scary. If they have a problem one time, they won't go back. But
And they won't go back to cover crops.
They won't go back to cover crops
Right,
because
yeah.
they had such a disaster.
Yeah.
And then the government wants to say that you have to use rye for those EQIP dollars. That's a change, in my opinion, that needs to happen.
Okay.
And
All right.
that may be a state-by-state issue because we do the equip and ours is purely brassicas and clover. So
Yes, yeah.
it could be a different by region too. Like I said before, it's everywhere we farm is different. So like for us, equip, rye is not required.
Okay. Great. Andy, any thoughts on that? On what?
I'm going to defer to the cover crop guys. Like I said,
Okay,
I'm-
you're right. Yeah,
But-
you're in that soil where you have to aim to grow a bag
But
crop.
I will
right?
tag on to Kelly. He is right that the equip dollars, at least in the state of Illinois, you got to be rye. So on our sand, that's really to double dip on the
Okay. All
cover
right.
crops. We have to use rye, and
Great.
it is a burger to terminate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Got time for just maybe a couple more. Any others? Okay, so if not, you see any, I just want to make sure you get them asked. Obviously, these guys are deep into it. Remember, one powerful thing, they're actually having someone write them a check to do this, right? So it's not just theory as you think about it. The other thing is we know the market is headed this way because it is consumer driven, no question about it. So here's what I'd like to ask the four of you to wrap us up with, and that is if you could offer advice to these folks as we think about this whole broad topic that we've talked about, what would that advice be? Andy, we'll start with you and go right across the board. Take it away.
Yeah, I think I've probably said it 2 or 3 times, but just being ready for what's coming downstream at us. It's, you know, whether it's 45Z or having your data ready for data-enriched bushels, you know, whatever platform you're using, I'd love to work with you, but whatever platform you're using, be ready. Talk to your end users, your ethanol plants, wherever you're delivering your grain. See what kind of opportunities are out there, and then just be organized and be ready. Like I said, the first fruits are probably going to be the first guys to the table are going to be the ones that reap the largest rewards.
Yep. I guess my advice is to do something. You know, don't just sit back and do nothing, because in ag we compete with our neighbors. You know, we like them or not, we're still competing with them. And if they're getting a leg up that you're not, do something. I mean, no matter who you do it with, do something with. I would suggest not getting locked into something that pays a flat fee per contract, because, you know, Bloomberg did an independent study that they're predicting $200 to $250 a ton by 2030. If that's the case, you're looking at six-figure dollars to you as a farmer. So stay flexible, but get involved in something.
I would just echo what these guys are saying. You got to stay educated, stay informed. You know, try not to keep your eye on the market every day, and try to keep your eye on what's coming down the pike, right? So that's about it. You just got it's a very fluid situation, and I'm sure the four of us all wish we had more answers on stuff like 45Z and stuff, but don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand it, it's easy. It's very easy to ask a question. So that's it. Just stay informed.
I would say educate yourself on what you think or estimate what your customers' CI scores are and how the products that you have can help them lower that score. That's going to give you an edge in the marketplace versus your competition.
Thank the panel. Awesome, guys. Thank you very much.